Let's go ahead and jump right into this video, because if you clicked on this, it might mean that you are a little bit stressed out about not being able to get all your crochet Christmas gifts done in time. I'm going to keep this short, I'm going to keep this sweet, and let's jump right into it. The first tip I have for getting more crochet done before Christmas is pick simple patterns. Now is not the time to be picking out super elaborate, super detailed projects. And in a couple videos before, I've mentioned why sometimes those projects aren't the best to gift to other people anyway, that sometimes those are best for the projects best to keep ourselves. But this is not the time to be doing elaborate projects. You can do a lot of different Pinterest searches, or if you even go into a lot of playlists on YouTube, you'll see simple projects. I know a friend of mine, Sweet Moments by Jessie just put out a very beginner friendly, simple, but very pretty scarf pattern the other day, and you only need basic skills for that one. I will link her scarf pattern in the description if you're interested. But yeah, this is not the time to be picking up giant blanket patterns, afghans, elaborate shawls, wearables like a cardigan or anything like that. Now is probably not the time to be starting those for Christmas projects. If you want to make those for Christmas, I absolutely commend you and I admire your spirit. But those are projects that should have been started probably months ago. Wrapping up number one, simple patterns for Christmas. Second tip to crochet more before Christmas time is this is not the time to be experimenting with new patterns. I know I will have a couple patterns linked here. If you don't have some tried and true patterns yourself, I'll link some below so that you do have a jumping off point. But as far as I'm concerned, now is not the time to experiment with fun new patterns. Save those for January. Save those when you don't have a date, because this is a time when you need to know that that pattern's going to work. You don't want to be wasting time frogging. You don't want to be having to rework parts of it because maybe a pattern's hard to understand or it's not working with the yarn, that type of stuff. Stick with tried and true patterns. And I will give you a couple examples of the projects I'm working on shortly. Number 3, no experimenting with fun novelty yarns right now. If it's a novelty yarn you've used before and you like and works well, knock your socks off. But especially if you're a beginner, now is not the time to be trying them out. I know a pretty common yarn that looks beautiful worked up is homespun yarn. But it's not super easy to work with. You really have to get a feel of it. You have to know how much you can kind of pull on it. You need to know, what hooks, what projects works for it. That's just an example, but you get what I'm saying. Pick with yarns that you're used to using. Same goes for textures. I love those Hygge type yarns, the very soft, fuzzy polyester type ones, but they're kind of hard to work with and you don't always know what they're going to end up looking like in a pattern. So stay away. As beautiful as they are and as warm and cozy as they would be for Christmas, now's not the time. If you're not sure what to do for any basic scarf or beanie, what I would suggest doing is a mid-grade acrylic yarn. So I wouldn't necessarily go for a budget yarn like Red Heart Super Saver, which I love, don't get me wrong, but it's not really known for being super soft and cozy, and I would hate for you to get all the way through a project and touch it and then hate it because of the texture. And I do have a video on my channel on how to soften acrylic yarn, but again, now is not the time to be messing with that stuff. So Karen Simply Soft is a great yarn. If you maybe are a little more of an advanced beginner or an intermediate, because sometimes it gets a little splitty on your hook, but Hobby Lobby has an equivalent that is pretty similar, and also Hobby Hobby Lobby has I Love This Yarn, where they have a ton of different prints and colors, and it's very soft and squishy and durable. I would pick something like that, where it's a little bit nicer than a budget yarn, but it's still very, very affordable and readily available and easy to use. So the fourth tip I have is make a lot of the same thing. So I am going to be making all of the females that I'm giving crocheted gifts to the same hat, but in different yarns. And I'm going to be making the males the same hat, but in different yarns. Stick with a pattern that you know you can crank out, but if you don't have one, I will link this one below. It's by Lovingly Nye, and this uses 6-weight yarn. So I'm gonna roll the next tip kind of in this one here too. So this beanie I can crank out in about 30 to 40 minutes using 6-weight yarn. And with her pattern, she recommends using, I believe, an 8.5 hook, and I do not do that. I use a 10mm hook for this hat pattern in order to get it to fit my head. And it is a little snug, but I have a large head for a woman. I have also found in her pattern, I add usually 1 extra row, if not 2 extra rows. It's depending, like this one, it was this thicker recycled yarn from Hobby Lobby. It's Reclaim. And so it is definitely a firm, thick 6-weight, but I did another one where it was a little bit softer. This is Lion brand, is it Hometown? I think it is. And it's a much kind of softer, squishier 6-weight. So I ended up adding 2 extra rows down on this because it just wasn't quite as big as I wanted it to be. All right, tangent over, back to the beginning. So I am making all of the females the same hat. And I am gonna get some pom-poms to put on these, but I think one of them that I have not made yet will remain pom-pom-less because it's for someone a little bit more mature, and I just don't know if she would want a pom-pom or not. Same pattern every time. I am not searching for the pattern. I have a screenshot of it on my phone that if I do need to quick glance at it, I can just go in and look at the photographs, and it is nice and easy. And I pretty much know exactly what to do because I've done it so many times. So, you know, I know exactly how many rows of increase, I know how many to go down, and I know all the stitches. And I think it just kind of keeps my brain a little bit more clutter free and keeps it in the zone so I can work faster and get more done. You know, no searching for patterns, it's just, you don't have to retrain your brain. It is just nice and easy. And, you know, it's not like the people receiving these are going to look at them and be like, oh my gosh, they're the same. They won't be. Like I said, they're going to have different palms and everything. I am going to show you real quick here another hat that I will have linked if you want a nice go-to 6-weight yarn hat, and it is right here, and this is called the 30-minute beanie. It is by Persia Lou, and this actually uses I think a 15mm hook. This is one where you can definitely get done in 30 minutes. You could definitely put a pom on top if you want, if it was more structured than this, but this is a great way, and these are definitely like one skein projects as well. So I will have this one linked as well if you don't already have a go-to pattern. I have 2 tips that kind of go together, and while doing these, using a 6-weight yarn has helped me go much faster and get these beanies done quicker. I am also going to be making some of these beanies, and this one is mine. You have probably seen me wear it in other videos because I love it. It's the Breathe Deep yarn, which is discontinued, unfortunately, but it claims to be a 4-weight, but it is definitely a 3-weight. So I am going to be using some of this yarn in other colors for some of the guys, but what I am going to do to make this go a little bit quicker is to use 2 strands of it together in the same color to speed it up. So this beanie is one of these where you make a rectangle like this, and I always decrease. So I'm doing half double crochets until the last 5 on this side. And at this point, I do single crochets. And as you can see, it just brings it in a little bit more so that when I sew it together and then I go to cinch this up at top, there's just not as much right up here, not as much bulkiness. And I will link the video to my scrappy beanie where that's done in scraps, but if you did it all in the same yarn, like this is just a striped yarn, you don't have to switch out like I did in that video, but I've got the instructions on how I do this there. When you're making these, you don't need a pattern per se. You know, you just kind of want to make it about 13 to 15 inches based on, you know, how much it's going to be rolled up, or if it's going to be worn a little bit slouchy, depending on the recipient. For this one right here, I did, I believe, 45 chains to get it here, and this is about, you know, this was about 14 inches before it was cinched up. And this is a slouchy beanie size on me, and for my husband, he's not into slouchy beanies. He wears his, or that I made in black. It's right here, coincidentally. He takes his and just folds it up. And again, that 14 inches seem to work pretty good for those. But since I don't need a pattern, I just know that it needs to be about 14 inches tall and probably about 22 inches in length. I can double up the yarns on this to make it go faster. I don't think with this one, like using a 6 weight would probably be in my best interest because I think it would make it pretty hard to cinch up the top of this. So I don't want to mess with that. But you could, if you have a 5 weight in your stash and you know, you think it would make a good hat, you could definitely do a 5 weight with this. Like I said, I'll just be pairing 2 of these that are basically 3 weights together. Now the next tip I have is to treat it a little bit like an assembly line. So we're not trying to turn ourselves into a sweatshop here and get that much done. We're not doing that, but we are doing it as an assembly line. So I got a hat done and I literally still have the last little bit of tail on there connected, and I just plopped it right inside of the hat, put that on the shelf. Next one, same thing, tied off, snipped it because I had more of this yarn, threw it on the shelf. Same way with this, and I'm even just keeping the tags in here so that when I make a little tag for it, I know what to put on it as far as washing instructions and stuff. That way I can stay in that crocheting zone. And once I get those done, then I'll go through and I will weave in the end. At that point, I'll put palms on the ones that need to have palms on. And at that point, I will go ahead and attach a little tag. I have just some cardboard tags I picked up at Joann. So that's the last step before packaging them. And the final thing I want to add, which isn't really a productivity tip, but it's just a tip for your well-being, and that would be to be realistic about what you can get done in the next few weeks. Let me tell you a little story about a woman named Shannon last year. I had high hopes in getting some projects done. I bought several yards of fleece and coordinating yarn. What I like to do instead of those tie blankets is to buy a big piece of fleece and then use my rotary cutter with a skip blade to go around the edges to make holes, and then go through and crochet around it. It takes far less time than actually crocheting a whole afghan. But what happened was I ended up getting sick. I had put a lot of pressure on myself and I didn't know I was getting sick. I ended up with influenza and we missed a ton of work, and it was a whole thing. But in the process, it was like 2 weeks out of December where I was down and out and I couldn't even look at this. And when I started these projects and was trying to cut my fleece up, I was actually getting like those first initial flu symptoms where you think something might be wrong, but you don't really know what yet. And it just went downhill from there. And I got so frustrated with this fleece and with the projects, and I got none of it done. None of it. Every time then I looked at that fleece and the yarn I had gotten sitting in my stash, I would get so frustrated remembering the meltdown I had when I just lost it because it was just too much. I'm not proud of having meltdowns, but I'm telling you this in case you have one, that you know you're not alone. That I think a lot of us have meltdowns when it comes to our crafting projects, especially if there's a deadline. But anyway, I ended up being able to give that yarn and that fleece to my friend because she was actually looking for some to make for her grandson. So it worked out perfect, and I feel great that I got it out of my stash and that it went to a person who's using it, and then it will go to a little boy who will love it. It was too much to do in too short of time. So give yourself some grace and be realistic about what you can actually get done. I want to thank you so much for letting me talk yarn with you. I've got videos down in the description box that I will link if you want to check any of those out. And I want to thank you so much, especially if you made it this far in the video. I just want to know how much I appreciate you. And it's like the best Christmas gift for me is getting to talk yarn with you guys, and especially having conversations down in the comments. So I hope this video helps, and I will talk yarn again with you soon. Bye guys.